How does perception impact performance? I'm Annie Gibbins. Women's Biz Leaders starts now. Women's Biz Leaders, presented by Women's Biz Global, where each episode we dive into the journeys and successes of remarkable women in business. Joining me now is Dr. Maja Zelihic, Dean of Forbes Business School and Technology from the University of Arizona. Hello there, Dr. Maja.
Hi, how are you? Very nice to be here with you and your audience members.
It's wonderful to have you joining me today, and I'm super excited about discussing the whole topic of perception, how we perceive ourselves, how others perceive themselves and you. It's such an interesting topic that I know you are the expert in. So I'd love you to explain to our viewers today, what does the E.P.I.C approach to perception mean, and how does it differ from other models that you have seen?
Sure. Well, we've done research. We've done quite a bit of research in the field of perception. And my co-author and I, Dr. Diane Hamilton, we didn't want to do just another book that is purely academic in nature, because we do know that academic articles are not read by the broader audience members. So we actually created a book that is for business leaders and those individuals that are aspiring to be leaders. An E.P.I.C process of perception is basically a very simple process of evaluating, predicting, interpreting, and correlating. The very first step of the process is to be aware of our own selves, the way we perceive reality, and what type of variables impact the way we perceive this world. Once we are self-aware, we can hopefully also predict the awareness of others and how others perceive our message. So as we're talking today, and your audience members are actually tuning in and listening to us, my prediction will be that perhaps they will find this topic of interest. That is based on the notion that perception impacts all layers of life, not just corporate world, and not just us as employees. Now, as we are evaluating our own selves, predicting what others may feel as we interact, we are also interpreting all of this, ultimately correlating, and that helps us with our critical thinking, that helps us with decision making, that helps us with doing actions not only at a place of work, but every single venue of life. So some other indexes were focusing on the cognitive biases, and we do touch upon that, or the sensory inputs. However, we were looking at all the variables that are impacting our perception. Variables such as the not just intelligent, emotional intelligence, prior life experiences, also gender, the way we interact with others, spirituality, and so forth. Many other variables that we were looking at, critical thinking, and also the way we decide things in life.
It's such a deep, complex, fascinating topic, the whole topic of perception. And I love the way you did two things there. One, you started with your own self-perception before we start looking at how others perceive ourselves. And then also you've done a great job of appreciating that, you know, what we know in academia often does not translate to the way the average person thinks about these topics. And this one is a big one. So how does perception impact performance? Because those watching this show are all about being successful, increasing their performance, and therefore perception has got to be a very strong factor of that.
There's a direct correlation between perception and performance. And as we work with different companies, administering the index and actually teaching managers how to understand mechanisms that are impacting perception and how their employees perceive reality, the way we perceive messages at work is directly impacting the way we perform. So if I'm a recipient of the message that I consider less than kind or perhaps not in my best interest, my motivation will go down, and consequently I may actually perform at a lower rate than what I would have if that message was received the way it was perhaps intended. So we always go with this notion that as managers communicate, as leaders communicate, let's give everyone benefit of a doubt. We go with this notion that they have the not just the company's best interest in mind, but also employees' best interest in mind. So the way they communicate is trying to encourage, trying to inspire, trying to rally everyone around the common goals. If that is your intended message, you have to be fully of the level of certain level of awareness how your employees perceive your messages. How they perceive your message is very much connected to the way they perceive you and your personality and the way you're treating them on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's a massive factor. I know if I'm looking at it from the, just a normal working environment, 2, 3, 10, 20 people can all see something completely different based on their own self-perception or the way that they feel others are perceiving them. Absolutely. So you wrote a book called The Power of Perception, and you discuss challenging the status quo in this whole area. So how can leaders use perception to drive innovation and change within their organizations, appreciating that we all have very different positions of where we are coming to the table and how we see ourselves and relate to others?
Well, yeah, and what you've said is so powerful because everyone heard of that old expression that probably is something that we all should stop using, which is this is just business, it's not personal. Well, yeah. Everything is deeply personal. Everything is deeply personal. Therefore, having a layer of understanding of what type of baggage your employees bring to the workplace, that is not necessarily spending hours upon hours of knowing someone's personal story, but getting to know your employees, understand what motivates them. Here at the Forbes School of Business and Technology, University of Arizona Global Campus, as I'm interacting with my employees, I do realize that there are different things that motivate them. Of course, we have common goals. So, of course, we have joint interests, but at the same point of time, you have vastly different individuals that are motivated by different things, different factors. Therefore, understanding your employees first and foremost is going to generate the way you communicate. And also fully understanding that perception is very, very fluid. Is there such a thing as a business reality? We spend just a little bit of a time touching upon Greek philosophers in our book and their ways of looking at the perception, if there is such a thing as the actual reality in this world. Back to your point, you can have a few individuals looking at the same situation, walking away with a total different perception of what took place. There was a different studies of even certain scenarios where a couple was arguing at a restaurant, and then everyone was interviewing folks that were actually surrounding them at different tables, just as an experiment. Mm-hmm. And yet again, everyone walked away with a vastly different impression of what had happened. This research, this book, actually took place as a result of my colleague. I was in the same meeting as with her, and we walked away with a vastly different message, and we heard the very same message. And yet again, we were talking about, we are both females, educated. We always say hopefully intelligent, and we have similar work experiences, right? So why was I walking away with a much more pessimistic perception of what took place versus Diane walking away with such a level of optimism? We pinpointed that to the life experiences and those type of variables, because yet again we brought ourselves to a workplace. It is not just business, it is deeply personal.
Oh, it's so deeply personal. I just had a situation in the last week where, two people go to a meeting, one gets picked up on points and they think, oh my gosh, I could get fired, this is doom and gloom, and sort of, virtually fell apart. And someone else goes, oh wow, thanks for drawing my attention to that. I had no idea. I'd love to just, implement those changes straight away. And now where can we go with that? It's like so different based on so many of those foundational factors that I think we just do not spend enough time with when we're growing up, learning about ourselves, what drives us and how we're going to respond to different situations. I'd love to ask you, you've done your research in so many different countries. You've gone to Haiti and Cuba and Zambia. And how have your global experiences shaped your understanding of perception in different cultural contexts? Is it very different?
Well, at the end of the day, human beings are incredibly, vastly different, but also incredibly similar, especially when it comes to that concept of how we perceive reality. And, feelings getting hurt is actually a universal thing. Yes, we do have cultural differences. We do have slight differences when it comes to behavioral patterns with the way the work culture is different in many different places, but the human kindness, empathy, having the best intent as you're communicating, understanding a culture of another, those are those universal variables that are impacting the way we interact with each other. And we spend quite a bit of time talking about the culture and the differences, how we perceive reality different depending upon our culture. And one of the things that we've established, and I've established this as I was traveling and doing different research, and of course the research that I was doing was not always on perception. I've done research in many different areas, is to be an observer first. Mm-hmm. I love to talk, and I talk a lot, as my loved ones can tell you and attest to it. But ultimately, what I end up doing is, as I'm interacting with different individuals from different cultures, I like to be quiet at first and observe. And also ask for permission to maybe make certain inquiries as I'm learning. I have not encountered a culture where if I ask something in a very respectful manner, letting them know that I'm trying to learn, everyone is very receptive of that.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just so important in the global work world that we're working on. One of my previous guests was talking about, remote working, all engaging in teams across the planet now. And so we need to be more and more aware of our cultural differences. Do you have any practical steps that viewers can take to improve their perception skills if they haven't really thought of this topic for a while?
Well, being self-aware, which is the most difficult thing to achieve, and that is a work in process. Each one of us, we're working on this on a daily basis. What am I trying to project? What am I trying for the universe to see versus who I am behind closed doors? What are my fears, my dreams, my hopes? What are some of the things that I have as an area of opportunity? Let's define this, and whether you want to write it on a piece of paper and actually work on certain things. As a matter of fact, just because I've spent many years actually working in this field and understanding this field, it doesn't mean that I have a superb perception. For example, I already defined one of the opportunities that I have that I'm aware of. Being self-aware is not gonna you're not gonna change who you are. I do feel that a lot of times in life, I look at things with a bit of a more pessimistic lens. And I don't think that will ever fundamentally change. However, what will change through the research that I have done is for me to be aware of it. So for me to question myself, Maja, is that really that bad? Or is that just like the inner voice in your head telling you that it is?
Yeah.
So me being aware is that toolkit that you have. That is not to say that you will change who you are, but being aware is half of the battle.
Oh, well, there you have it, folks. It's all about self-awareness. Start on this topic. If it's an area that you haven't thought about for a while, start with self-awareness, because it all affects your perception of yourself, of others, how they perceive you. Fantastic discussion. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Dr. Maja Zelihic. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll be right back with you very soon.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.